We start in the United States, which has narrowly avoided a government shutdown after both houses of Congress approved a short-term funding bill in a rare show of cross-party unity. The last-ditch resolution will keep the government running for a further 45 days, but excludes further aid for Ukraine. President Biden welcomed the deal, which he said prevented an unnecessary crisis, but expressed disappointment that it failed to honour commitments to Ukraine. The bill was passed just before the midnight deadline that would have seen tens of thousands of federal employees placed on furlough and various government services suspended. The issue of more aid for Ukraine is something opposed by some hard-right House Republicans. Here's Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
It's been a day full of twists and turns, but the American people can breathe a sigh of relief. There will be no government shutdown. Democrats have said from the start that the only solution for avoiding a shutdown is bipartisanship, and we're glad that Speaker McCarthy has finally heeded our message. In the end, more Democrats supported this bill in the House than Republicans, proving bipartisanship was the best answer all along. I want to thank my colleagues here in the Senate, especially our appropriators, yourself, Madam President, Susan Collins, and Leader McConnell. Our bipartisan work in the Senate set the tone for the bill we're about to pass. Our bipartisanship made this possible and showed the House that they had to act. We will keep the government open for 45 days with a clean CR at current funding levels. And we avoided all of the extreme, nasty, and harmful cuts MAGA Republicans wanted.
Well, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell offered this commitment.
Most Senate Republicans remain committed to helping our friends on the front lines, to investing more heavily in American strength that reinforces our allies, and deterring our top strategic adversary, China. I'm confident the Senate will pass further urgent assistance to Ukraine later this year.
Well, Mr. Biden released a statement saying, in part, tonight, bipartisan majorities in the House and Senate voted to keep the government open, preventing an unnecessary crisis that would have inflicted needless pain on millions of hard-working Americans. But President Biden was critical about the lack of new funding for the war in Ukraine, writing, "We cannot, under any circumstances, allow American support for Ukraine to be interrupted. I fully expect the Speaker will keep his commitment to the people of Ukraine and secure passage of the support needed to help Ukraine at this critical moment." Our North America correspondent Sean Dilley sent this update from Washington.
The United States government came perilously close, that close to stopping at midnight on Saturday. But that was averted thanks to this compromise deal that won't entirely please Democratic or Republican politicians, won't please Democratic politicians because they've had to agree not to approve any more funding to Ukraine, at least within the terms of this stopgap bill. And the Republicans didn't get the very deep cuts that they had wanted. For instance, they had been calling for 30% cuts to Social Security. It is a bit complex, though, because a deal was done in the background. Speaker McCarthy, a Republican himself, has agreed that if this bill was passed, he would introduce another bill in the coming days to discuss further funding for Ukraine. Now, that's already angered hardline Republicans who were already threatening to remove him from office if he relied on Democratic votes to push through an earlier vote that had been agreed by the Senate. But what we have here is not exactly consensus for the sake of consensus, but it's a deal of convenience. It does keep the government open. The financial and economic repercussions, had the government have shut, would have been very serious. Moody's, the credit ratings agency, warning that the credit rating would have been at a risk of being downgraded, meaning that borrowing would have been more expensive, and hundreds of thousands of federal employees would have been put on unpaid leave. Now, that's a problem that it may not have gone away completely, but it's a problem that certainly kicked down the road a bit till the middle of November. So already backroom dealings are taking place. The White House has said that that they expect the Speaker to deliver on his promise to bring that Ukraine funding bill in the coming days. And the Pentagon has expressed concern about the message that failing to fund Ukraine within this deal could have the message that it could send to Kyiv. So watch this space. More dealings and more division is all but certain.
Well, I've been speaking to Daniel Lippman, White House and Washington reporter for Politico. He told me how the shutdown was averted.
Speaker Kevin McCarthy finally put a clean government spending bill on the floor. He had previously discussed with House conservatives to put different bills that would drastically cut government spending. Those all actually failed. And so today, on the last day before a shutdown, he did something that the Senate would also agree to. And this delays it for about a month and a half or so. And then we'll hopefully we won't be, all up to the same, government shutdown watch like we have been in the last few days.
Yeah, this keeps on happening, doesn't it? Every few years. Why?
Well, we've seen a decline in members who are interested in actually governing. And you've had a lot of rabble-rousers elected, like Congressman Matt Gaetz, who is Kevin McCarthy's lead antagonist from Florida. And he uses these types of shutdown watches to raise lots of money. I'm on his mailing list, and he was sending out emails today saying, please donate. I am standing up to the DC establishment. And so there's a small cohort of House Republicans that are not interested in the government working properly. And so that makes it very hard when you have McCarthy only having a 4 to 5 seat margin. And so it's kind of impossible for him to rule over this unruly caucus.
So under this new deal, no new funding for Ukraine has been approved. What does it mean for aid for the country?
Well, they're going to try to do another supplemental bill on Ukraine aid in the next few weeks. It'll probably actually be much larger than they could have gotten if they had put it in this bill. And so you have a House Senate minority leader, Mitch McConnell, a Republican, who is very in favor of this aid. And so there might have been a backhanded deal with McCarthy saying, hey, he'll put a similar bill on the floor and see if it succeeds. But we're still unsure about this aid, extra aid to Ukraine, but it's looking better than yesterday on that front.
Do you think they'll find a permanent solution to avoid future shutdowns under what comes next deal next month?
There's no permanent solution, and a lot of people in Washington are pretty mad because this makes the U.S. almost a laughingstock, because no other major democracy has these types of potential shutdowns or actual shutdowns, and Congress has the power of the purse. And so unless you're going to elect people into Congress who are all about governing and not about just getting social media hits and TV news appearances, then we could be seeing these for a while, unfortunately.